Lloyd was murdered by the king, reincarnated as a lucky bastard prince of a noble family, with unlimited magical power and unlimited harem. Once upon a time, a common magician was on the verge of death, caused by the king and his courtiers, because he was a lowly commoner, and a weak and failed magician. Then the king ordered him to show some of his magic before he died. When the magician tried to use any of his abilities, he could not use them to their full strength, which made the king ridicule him and told him that the most important thing the magician has is pedigree, talent, and perseverance, then used his magical ability to eliminate him, and his last words to him were that diligence does not compensate for the lack of talent, whatever it is, and that magic would not accept a person like him to use it. Despite the pain he was feeling, the nobleman's ability to use magic impressed him, and he wished he had learned more so that he could use magic as he wished. After a short period of time, the wizard regained consciousness to find himself sleeping in a crib with a group of maids staring at him excitedly. He thought at first that they were enemies and decided to defend himself, but he was surprised to see that his hand was very small, and yet he managed to hit a huge fireball towards them and made a huge hole in his room while everyone was celebrating in the streets and squares the birth of the 7th prince of the kingdom of Sallow, Lloyd. Years later, Lloyd was hiding from the maids in a corner of the palace, and after he was able to hide from their sight, he continued on his way and was surprised when his father's entourage appeared in front of him, so he asked them not to tell the maids to see him. One of them offered him to join them on a hunting trip, but he soon realized that he had disappeared from in front of him after he hurriedly ran away before any maid could find him, and they realized that there was no point in winning his favor because he was out of competition for the throne due to his young age compared to his brothers. Then they remembered that he had supernatural abilities, as he spoke right from birth, preferred to read spell books instead of children's stories, and refused to breastfeed naturally like any nobleman, making him in the position of the great magician William Burdo, as if he had been born again to life. Then Lloyd continued to run and hide from the sight of the maids and seemed to be happy and enjoying his new life after being resurrected as the youngest prince in a noble family. And what puzzled him was that he still had memories of his previous life and decided to follow the same philosophy that he followed in his previous life and devote his life to learning magic. While fleeing from the maids, he accidentally entered the palace library and was amazed to see a huge number of magical books beyond the Salom Academy of Magic. And when he picked up one of the books, one of the maids named Silpha was able to find it, and she is basically the maid responsible for training him in sword fighting. After they practiced for some time in the palace courtyard, Lloyd thought there was no point in him learning how to use a sword since he was the youngest of his siblings and had no chance for the throne. She told him that life is not only about royal succession, but that he should know how to carry a sword as a member of the royal family. Lloyd thought that he should show off his skills in front of him so that he could finish the training before nightfall. As they continued practicing, Silpha admired his increasing strength over time while Lloyd used control magic to track her every move but always ended up defeated due to the physical differences between them. This time, he decides to cheat a little too much and use physical augmentation skills to overpower her. He finds that he can counter her and fight with equal strength until he decides to suddenly make a different move and surprise her with a strike. But he is quickly surprised to discover that she has been cheating all this time and ends up losing, as usual. She then admired his skill and cleverness in using 2 spells at once, which is difficult for even court magicians, while Lloyd was frustrated because he was basically using 4 spells, not 2. In the evening, Lloyd was trying to elude Silpha, who forced him to bathe with her and the other maids, refusing to leave him alone so he wouldn't indulge in reading too much magic, and warning him that the demon of the forbidden books would devour him if he wasn't obedient. Lloyd was surprised that there were demons and forbidden books in this world too. One of the maids told him that a long time ago, the kingdom was about to be destroyed, but after the sacrifice of many mages, they succeeded in sealing the demon inside a book, and the demon was called Grimoire. Silpha thought that this was a fairy tale with no basis in reality, and that Lloyd couldn't possibly be afraid of such a story. They ended up fighting over who would take him to sleep in her room tonight, while he managed to sneak past them and decided to go to where the forbidden book was in the basement of the palace. After everyone had gone to bed for the night, Lloyd used a stealth spell to sneak into the forbidden library without being seen by the guards, who were confident that no one could get past their security system and the impenetrable barrier created by a group of wizards with dozens of spells. When Lloyd reached the barrier, he was able to destroy it easily thanks to his strength. Then he became excited when he saw a large collection of forbidden magical books and wanted to explore them all. Then he was surprised by one of the books that moved by itself. Then the demon sealed inside came out and he admired his strength with which he was able to break the seal of the door. Then it turned out to be the demon Grimoire who heard his story from the maids, and when he asked him to break his seal to free him in exchange for giving him a lot of money. But Lloyd soon discovered his lie when he found that he had turned the dust into gold pieces. Then he told him that he did not intend to release him from his seal so that he would not be a threat to the kingdom in which he lives and learns magic. The demon tried to convince him that he has no grudge against anyone from the current era after all his enemies died centuries ago, and offered to teach him ancient magic. Lloyd's eyes lit up and the demon thought he had him. When he told him that he saw that he had a magical talent, he remembered that he had died in his previous life because he lacked it despite his best efforts, and he realized that the king was right and that now he was more special than any other commoner who knew magic. Then he decided to help the demon break free of his seal. And after he was freed, he surprised Lloyd with a thunderous attack while he was waiting for him to start teaching him the ancient arts of magic, and he thought he had managed to get rid of him, but he was shocked to see that he had already formed a protective barrier around himself and asked him to show him more. Lloyd analyzes his power through his protective barrier and, excited to feel his own power, he makes a breach to get some of his spell, and although he feels pain, he enjoys it and is able to figure out how the spell is constructed. Lloyd then asked the demon to show him more of his power. The demon went crazy and decided to plunge him into the darkness of his limitless power. As he launched his full attack, Lloyd continued to analyze the spells and found that the demon had two mouths because he could cast two spells and merge them together to work as one. Although the demon did a lot of damage inside the library, it was unable to penetrate the barrier. Confused by Lloyd's praise of his superhuman abilities, instead of feeling fear, he rushed towards him to try and break through the barrier himself, and was soon surprised to find himself inside the barrier, and Lloyd trapped himself inside a multi-layered barrier. He then decides it's his turn to attack and asks the demon to show him his defensive magic. While the demon is shocked to see his fire spell, and the amount of energy it took to use it, and ends up turning into ash. Then he used the spell to put the place back in order and erase any trace of the fight. The demon admired him and told him that he had never met a magician as powerful as him before, so he approached him and started patting his head as if he were his own dog. When he realized that demons do not die from magic, he was curious to see how many spells he could withstand. Then the demon trembled in fear of him and retreated to a safe distance and admitted his loss and pledged his complete loyalty to him and asked him to allow him to accompany him as his servant. And Lloyd agreed on the condition that he change his appearance so as not to attract the attention of people around him. So he transformed himself into a smaller form and then decided to flatter him to gain his trust, and then betray him when the time was right. When he approached Lloyd, he was shocked that he had so much magical energy that he couldn't move while Lloyd thought he might be cold. The demon told him that he could call him Grim from now on and decided it was best for him to obey him and stay by his side until he thought of a solution to get rid of him. Lloyd spent the whole time reading magical books, and the next day he was still reading in the palace library when he saw his older brother Albert heading towards him and ordered Grim to hide inside his clothes. Albert turned out to be the second prince of the family and the most likely candidate for king thanks to his physical abilities and intelligence. When it was his turn, he put on his gloves and approached the shooting range, excited because it was one of the rare opportunities he was allowed to use his magic inside the palace. But for a moment he thought that he shouldn't draw attention to himself, lest he be drawn into a succession struggle with his other siblings. Then he used the least amount of his power and managed to hit all the targets hanging in front of him, while Grim was shocked at his ability to hit the targets with the least amount of magic even though it was very difficult, and realized how obsessed he was with magic. Albert then decided to take a break and let him play as much as he wanted. When the others left with him, he was excited that he was alone on the shooting range and could use as many spells as he wanted. When he decided to try Grim's double spell trick, Grim told him that only demons could do it. Before he could finish his sentence, Lloyd grabbed one of his gloves and sucked it into his body, managing to materialize his face with his palm while Grim was shocked at the audacity of sucking it into him. He then asked him to shoot a ball of flame while in the palm of his hand. But when he entered Lloyd's aura, he panicked and almost lost his mind. He asked him where he suddenly found himself when he started casting the spell, and he replied that he was just stacking spells, a way to shorten spells by mixing them, and that he had just tried to try mixing 100 spells. Grim screamed in madness and told him that's not how it works and that he's only allowed to use 2 or 3 spells at a time. Lloyd thought to use his magic to control Grim's mouth and speak through it, and when he succeeded, he decided to start experimenting. He then used the fire and water spheres together in a single spell through both his mouth and Grim's, who felt that he would soon die because of Lloyd's eccentric madness after being under tremendous pressure from the magical energy. Lloyd thought it wasn't safe to direct that much power at any target. After mixing the 2 balls together, he decided to launch them into the sky. The entire kingdom witnessed his thunderous attack. Meanwhile, Albert's entourage wondered why he was paying so much attention to Lloyd. He told them about how he used his fireballs in training, that he deliberately used the least amount of his strength and hit all his targets in the same way, and predicted that he might become a great sage in the future and might need his skills and strength someday after he became king. When one of his courtiers looked out the window, he marveled that the sun was setting early today. On the other side, Grim was speechless after seeing the hole that Lloyd had opened in the sky, as if he had created a parallel universe. But soon the hole disappeared and the sky returned to normal. The next day, the news of Lloyd's hole appeared in all the newspapers and became the talk of the kingdom because of his recklessness. Then Grimm read a story about a group of ranked adventurers who succeeded in discovering a great treasure. Lloyd gets excited and decides to try his hand at exploring a labyrinth and collecting treasure. Grimm is horrified by the idea and tells him that he'll be in trouble if he disappears for a few days. So he uses a plant spell to create a replica of himself to take his place while he's out and about. Remembering that his maid, Silpha, would notice any change in him, even if it was minimal, he decided to use Grimm to enter the body of his doppelganger to help him move on his own. After the plan succeeded, he was able to leave the palace and communicate with him remotely through his magic, while Grimm pretended in front of the maids that he was arranging his hair and appearance. Then he had an idea to take advantage of Lloyd's absence to do what he wanted. But he was surprised when Lloyd told him that he considered him his companion and now relies on him to help him. On the other hand, Lloyd realized that he didn't know how to find the cave, and then he saw a girl running as fast as she could to escape the monsters, and suddenly she reversed direction to surprise one of the monsters with a fierce attack and managed to crush the rest with her strength effortlessly. Lloyd is impressed by her ability to control her breathing and turn it into energy for combat. But he is soon discovered after the girl notices his presence, so he has no choice but to go to her to ask her about the maze. Grimm told him that she would reveal his identity as soon as she saw his face. At that time, the girl decided to attack him after she considered him an enemy for not revealing himself. Once she climbed the hill, Lloyd was able to disguise himself as much as possible and introduced himself as Robert and told her that he was a new adventurer. She told him her name was Tao, a B-rank adventurer and martial arts practitioner. She couldn't look at him directly because he was so handsome. She remembered that she had spent 18 years training in martial arts and had left the dojo hoping to meet the right person. But unfortunately, they all preferred delicate priestesses, and she felt lucky to finally meet someone like Robert. Lloyd thought she was busy and told her that he hoped she would help him find the maze and explore it together. She didn't hesitate to accompany him and fulfill her dream of having adventures with her new boyfriend and kept showing off her strength and speed to him while he was busy collecting treasures. After that, they took a break to eat some food together, and she was surprised that he knew about her fighting style since only a few people are familiar with it. He told her that it is similar to magic energy in its functioning in relation to magic, and she told him that she uses her breath to fuel her magic. She told him that she uses her breathing to rotate her technique and use it to gain extraordinary explosive power. As she spoke, she was shocked to see that he was perfecting his breathing to execute her technique and that he was able to do it by watching her do it beforehand, and warned him that it could damage his lungs. At that time, Lloyd felt an energy in his body separate from the magical energy and thought about using this power for magic. When Tao noticed his interest in her technique, she offered to teach him more about it and told him to maintain this rate of breathing until they left the labyrinth. On the other side, Grimm's consciousness was inside the fake version of Lloyd, practicing his daily habits in the mansion, and found that he was just a child living a quiet life and not interested in anything but studying magic, when his thoughts were interrupted by Silpha's sudden appearance behind him. After a while, Lloyd and Tao were able to fully explore the labyrinth and overcome its leader, and when they went to open the treasure chest, she noticed that he quickly got used to her breathing technique, which made her excited that they have a common factor in a short time and may become her fiancé in the near future if their relationship develops. And when they opened the chest, they were surprised by a sudden attack emanating from it, but they were able to avoid it. Then they saw a skeleton wearing a cloak emerging from the bottom of the box, and Lloyd guessed that he might be a new leader of the labyrinth. When Lloyd notices Tao's nervousness at the sight of the monster, he asks her what kind of creature it is, and she puts on a brave face, telling him to leave the maze first while she takes care of him. And when he tells her he wants to watch them fight, she uses her power to push him away from the battlefield. The monster attacked her, but she was able to dodge it with her speed and wondered how a low-level maze could contain such a powerful monster, and thought she should buy as much time as possible so that Lloyd could escape safely. On the other hand, Lloyd wondered if it would be a good idea to go back, not knowing why she had thrown him away. And when he went to consult Grimm, he found him begging him to come home right away, and realized that something was wrong. In the meantime, Tao is badly damaged, but she decides to keep fighting him to protect Lloyd even though she knows she has no chance of winning. And when she thinks about trying to sneak out and escape, she is shocked to hear the monster's voice talking to her, and telling her that she has a strange technology and has already eaten someone with the same abilities as her. He tells her that he doesn't think she's worth the trouble of eating, but he is very curious about Lloyd, who responded to his attack before he saw him. She tells him that they are very different from each other, especially since he admires her fighting style, which most consider to be retrograde. She then used her breathing technique to continue attacking him. He surrounded himself with a protective barrier and thought it was a waste of time. But she did not give up and continued to attack him until she succeeded in breaking through the barrier. and inflicting overwhelming damage. However, after using up a lot of breath and unable to move, she quickly lost her strength and was surprised to find him standing behind her, uninjured, and telling her that her entire energy that helped her destroy the barrier was weaker than a single finger's worth of magic. Tao felt that she was going to die right here and now. And as soon as the monster finished her off with its attack, she was surprised that it was smashed to pieces by Lloyd's protective barrier, who told her that he would take care of the monster because he was in a hurry and wouldn't leave the maze without her. When she wanted to ask him why he had come back to her, she was surprised to see a look on his face that said he was obsessed with fighting a powerful opponent, that he didn't care about death, and that he was confident he could defeat it somehow. Then he pushed himself out of the barrier with an air spell using his lungs, rendering the monster immobile from shock. And when he tried to trap it with one of his techniques, he created a special protective barrier by combining magical energy with his breathing technique. Lloyd was then able to figure out how to use technology and magic to form a formidable force under his control. He then focused all his concentration on breathing deeply and speeding up his spell. The monster thought he was going to escape, so he continued to attack him, and then Lloyd decided to destroy the barrier because it was an obstacle to his plan. The monster saw this as his chance to finish him off, but Lloyd continued to dodge it, inhaling as much air as he could and mixing it with his magic. And when he reached the required level, he reversed the monster's attack towards him, but it didn't reach him due to the weakness of the blow, so he decided to continue attacking it, while reducing the intensity of his magical attacks and making them more intense. While the monster was having a hard time protecting itself, Lloyd was having fun and intending to try more ideas on it. The monster then had to surround itself with a protective barrier to ensure its safety, but it soon died after it delivered the fatal blow, splitting it in half along with the barrier and the maze wall, causing sunlight to penetrate the maze and becoming, in Tao's eyes, a superhero. Afterward, they approached the box, and when they opened it, they found a knife inside. Tao was frustrated that they had to go through the trouble of fighting the boss to get such a pathetic tool. But Lloyd decided to take it after feeling that it was imbued with magical energy regardless of its shabby appearance. After they got the knife, they were surprised by the ground swallowing the box. She told him that they should run away quickly because the maze was collapsing. But Lloyd realized how the maze works by absorbing the tools of the adventurers who die in it to recreate it again with other monsters and bosses, so he decided to take the box with him before they escape. After the labyrinth collapsed, Tao wondered why he decided to fight using the breathing technique instead of his superior magical abilities. She guessed that he did it for her because of the boss's taunts, but was soon shocked by his nonchalant answer that he was just having fun while fighting. When he started to return home, she told him that she would try her best to reach his level in using the breathing technique. When he returned home, he found his clone lying motionless on the ground as if someone had beaten him, and Grimm told him that his mate had shown no compassion for him during their sword training, having found him inferior, and decided to retrain him from scratch. Lloyd then emptied the contents of his bag, and Grimm was furious that he had delayed his return for this useless knife. But Lloyd told him that it was a treasure. Then he began to clean the knife and put it in a pot of hot water, and then he found a magic spell in the blade as he had expected. When Grimm asked him if he was an expert in the study of infatuation magic, he replied that it was not that easy, as if he failed to master the infatuation spell, he would lose both the essence and the weapon. Then he analyzed the essence of magical energy to make some himself, and when he used the purification spell to separate the elements from each other, it turned out that the spell consisted of 3 basic elements, making it a rare weapon. So he thought to make the essence himself through the box that is the core of the labyrinth, and found that he should get more weapons to enhance its power. The next day he went to meet his father Charles and got several pieces of silver. At first he thought that his son was modest and wanted to spend money to buy something. But Lloyd took the silver and headed to the lab immediately. Then he went to duel Silpha in the courtyard and managed to extract oil from the ground with his magic. And as usual, he failed to defeat her. But this time he was satisfied, and she apologized to him for treating him harshly yesterday because of his poor performance in the duel. Then she sat and thought about how irrationally strong he was for his young age, and imagined that he might become a knight when he grew up and became a young man or a swordsman. After Lloyd returned to the lab, everything was ready to make the magical energy essence, and he went to his brother Albert to ask him to make it. He went to his brother Albert to ask him to provide him with a stock of weapons to test his experiment. Albert praised him for his love of magic and then ordered his guards to give their weapons to him to strengthen them with power. They had to hand over their weapons with frustration on their faces, knowing that infatuation magic rarely works and that they could lose all their weapons to a child like Lloyd. After he had everything he needed to turn his idea into reality, he started to use infatuation magic on swords and engrave it on the blades, and with his first experiment he caused the blade to shatter because it did not withstand the spells he added. But he continued his experiment, and over time and after destroying many swords, he finally succeeded in adding infatuation magic and enhancing the power of a sword without shattering it. The next day, he returned to Albert and told him that out of 120 swords, the experiment succeeded on only 50. or about half, although the guards were impressed with their modified swords, while Albert was shocked that he was able to exceed the 10% success rate of the experiment, even though it was his first attempt. Then Lloyd expressed his desire to see the capabilities of the modified swords in a duel, and Albert agreed to fulfill his request and invited him to accompany him on a mission assigned by their father to hunt a monster in a forest. And Lloyd did not believe that he would go on his first mission with his older brother. The next day, Lloyd went with his brother and Silpha outside the kingdom to start their mission to hunt the monster. And on their way, he was surprised when he saw the view of the vast nature and many trees in the forest, and when they penetrated into it, Lloyd was enjoying his time because he rarely leaves the palace. Albert expressed his admiration for Silpha's dedication to taking care of his younger brother, and she told him that she was his mentor and bodyguard and was grateful that he had allowed her to accompany them. Albert asked her if she had any other special feelings for Lloyd, at which point she pulled part of her sword out of its scabbard as a threatening gesture. A group of monsters soon got in their way and they ended up surrounded, and although the guards prioritized protecting Lloyd and Albert, Lloyd was not at all confused, as he already sensed their presence through his breathing technique called spectral detection, which helps him feel his surroundings at all times. And when one of the guards sniffed at him, he was able to sense his surroundings. When one of the guards engaged one of the monsters, they were surprised that he was able to cut it in half with one blow thanks to his enhanced sword, and Lloyd felt proud of the success of his first experiment. And the soldiers were amazed as if they were children, as if they were holding a weapon for the first time. While Albert complimented him and told everyone that he had a genius younger brother, then they were surprised when one of the remaining monsters tried to surprise them at close range. Tao appeared out of nowhere and managed to finish him off with one kick. Then she was surprised to hear Lloyd's voice calling her name after forgetting that she only knew him as Robert. She approached him and asked him if he was breathing with a special technique because she had just sensed Robert's presence, and there was a strong resemblance between them. Then Silpha interrupted her, telling her not to get in their way and not to speak comfortably with the little prince. Albert had to intervene to calm things down and offered Tao to join them on their way to the lake as a thank you for her help. By nightfall, they all arrived at their destination and camped near the shore. Albert introduced himself, and Tao was surprised that she had been with the prince of the kingdom all this time. And the strangest thing is that he looks a lot like Robert in terms of shape and height, and she kept looking around for him, as she still felt his aura. On the other side, Lloyd was hiding behind a tent after realizing that using the breathing technique to detect those around him had backfired on him. So he decided to hide inside his tent until the monster they were targeting appeared. But he ended up stuck between Silpha's breasts after he found her changing her clothes inside because she decided to sleep in it next to him. He tried to convince her that he was fine on his own, but she tied him between her legs and told him that she wouldn't leave him alone while a homeless cat like Tao hung out with them. And then Tao entered after sensing his presence in the tent and found him in a pitiful state for a child. Silpha throws a blade at her to force her out of the tent and tells her to stop looking at Lloyd inappropriately, while Lloyd takes the opportunity to run away. And when he runs into Albert on his way, he chooses to sit with him for a while. Albert tells him that Silpha has changed a lot since she started taking care of him, and that she looks at him as a woman looks at a man, even though he is 10 years old, and warns him not to get involved with too many women at once, lest his life be turned upside down. Meanwhile, Tao and Silpha crush the soldiers after noticing them swarming around them, and Tao tells her that she was repairing an ancient shrine when she sensed the monsters in the morning at the top of the hill. Albert joined them and told Tao that she could stay with them until morning so as not to put herself in danger, and to use her ability to sense danger to act as a lookout for them. Soon a huge monster appeared out of nowhere to prove Albert's decision. The guards rallied around them to protect Albert, and when he attacked, Lloyd sat watching the fight from a safe distance, noticing Grimm's focus on the ancient shrine Tao had mentioned. Meanwhile, Tao joined the guards and tried to take down the monster, but found it to be stronger than she expected. Albert decided to try out his modified weapon and join the fight, and then fired a huge fireball at it, which was able to turn it into a pile of ash. When everyone praised his superhuman abilities, he humbly told them that it was thanks to the magic Lloyd had put in his weapon. And before Lloyd could rejoice in his brother's praise, Grimm told him that the place Tao was repairing in the morning had a sealed demon inside. At that time, everyone was shocked to see that the monster was still standing despite its miserable condition. Then they found a mysterious voice speaking to them through it and expressing his anger at hurting his followers. Then the demon controlling it came out of the monster's mouth and told them that he was called Pazuzu, and vowed to make them pay for their sin with their lives. Suddenly, many of his followers appeared from all sides, surrounding Albert and his companions. And when he tried to harm one of them, he was surprised that they had the ability to heal themselves, and they all realized that they were in trouble while Grimm told Lloyd that Pazuzu is able to control his monsters through his magical energy and helps them regenerate during the fight. Lloyd asked him to teach him how to transfer magical energy like Pazuzu now, and he wondered that he wanted to learn a new technique in the middle of the battle while everyone is fighting with their lives. And on the other side, Sylpha was furious when she heard Pazuzu mock Lloyd, so she decided to force him to keep silent forever and approached him to tell him that he and his followers are polluting the air that the prince breathes with their foul odor, so she will get rid of them all. Pazuzu laughed at her bravery and told her that the monster they had burned was now completely healed, and none of them would be able to harm his followers thanks to his ability to control them, and his magical energy would not run out over time. As he babbled and flexed his muscles, Sylpha provoked him further, forcing him to rush towards her. When he fell for her plan, she used her super speed to attack him, and before he knew it, she amputated all 4 limbs and advised him to get rid of his fur so that he could keep up with her speed. Pazuzu used his energy to regenerate the monster's limbs. The others noticed that the monsters were slow to regenerate due to his focus on regenerating the monster's limbs. So Albert ordered them to damage it as much as possible so that they could finish off the rest of his minions. Meanwhile, Grimm was still explaining Pazuzu's technique to Lloyd in detail. After he finished, he warned him that it wouldn't be an easy task to master the technique the first time. When he suggested starting with basic things first, Lloyd had finished making a flower with his magical energy, and they sat and breathed in its scent while Sylpha kicked Pazuzu's ass effortlessly. Pazuzu was shocked at how strong she was even though she was just a maid. Sylpha then borrowed a guard sword to use with her own as it was one of the swords Lloyd had strengthened. And when Pazuzu was curious about the child she was so desperate to protect, he told her what he would do to him when he got him and that he would tear his body to shreds. Pazuzu continued to provoke her, circling her at high speed until he pounced on her and thought he had her before she sliced his monster in half while staring directly into his eyes using the double blade technique. He was furious that she was able to get him with her unnatural strength for a maid, while Sylpha approached him and decided to teach him a harsh lesson for thinking that he could lay a finger on the prince in her presence. While Pazuzu is at Sylpha's mercy, the others manage to defeat the monsters and Albert decides it's time to support her and eliminate the demon before it regenerates. But before any of them can move, they begin to fall one by one, unable to move. Sylpha was surprised that she fell to the ground even though Pazuzu didn't touch her, thanks to his breathing technique that contains a gas that causes paralysis. Then he transformed into his full form and pushed her away, expressing his anger at hurting his followers. Sylpha then realized that the stench he had been giving off all along was due to this gas, and before he could finish her off, Tao stood between them to fight back, and instead of being grateful, Sylpha told her to fuck off and forget about it. I was furious and told her that if she was able to move, she should run away. Before Sylpha completely collapsed, I told her to take Lloyd and run away while she could. Suddenly, Pazuzu appeared behind her, wondering why she wasn't at his mercy like everyone else. And she didn't hesitate to deliver a roundhouse kick. She doesn't hesitate to throw a thunderous kick at him, but he uses the opportunity to tighten his grip and counterattack, realizing that she's using a breathing technique to help her survive all this time while Tao is in trouble after he disrupts her breathing. He tells her that she could have escaped while she was still able to move, but playing the hero will make her a follower. When he gets close enough, she smashes his face with her fist and tells him that there's no way she would abandon a handsome person who needs help, then launches a thunderquake pulse attack at him. After dodging him, she thought she had to keep her breathing steady to be able to withstand him, but unfortunately, she was shocked when she blocked a surprise attack from one of his followers and found that the rest had already regenerated. Pazuzu got up and wondered about the handsome person she had just talked about, seeing only a pile of garbage pathetically scattered on the ground. Then he approached her and increased the intensity of his polluted air to influence her. She told him that her intuition was correct all this time and that something was giving her courage and urging her to hold on. When Pazuzu wondered what she was saying, she told him that the handsome person was coming to kick his ass right now. As soon as she finished her sentence, the monster closed his mouth on her. Pazuzu laughed at her and thought she was pathetic. Then he decided to get revenge on Sylpha before he left and bring her under his complete control while Lloyd played around on the beach like a clumsy child. He approached Pazuzu and asked him if he was subjugating his fellow monsters in the same way he was subjugating Sylpha. He confessed that he had caused the death of their original families and replaced them in their subconscious minds to bring them under his complete control, not realizing that Lloyd had already freed them until it was too late. But what intrigued him most was his ability to move freely in his polluted air, and the fact that he was accompanied by a ridiculous demon who had ended up serving a human. When Grimm was infuriated by his sarcasm, he decided to give him some advice as a fellow demon. But he had second thoughts and wanted to see him torn to shreds in front of him. Lloyd was excited that it was time to try out his new technique on, but Grimm warned him that there were too many monsters and he would have to deploy an enormous amount of magical energy. He spread his energy after transforming it into flowers and flowers with a fragrant scent that controlled everyone's minds as soon as they felt it. And all the monsters remembered their memories with their original families, while Pazuzu was shocked that he could free them from his control just like that. Lloyd then approached the monster that swallowed Tao and asked him to take her out immediately. When Pazuzu tried to bring them under his control again, Grimm told him that it was useless, especially since they remembered the fact that he had caused the death of their families, and the monsters rushed towards him to tear his body while Lloyd sat watching them attack in a herd. Pazuzu tried to fight them off with all his might and started beating them, telling them that he was the one who made them so strong and that they were basically garbage and not worthy of him. He then told Lloyd that his spells were ineffective against demons and that he would teach him a lesson right then and there. Lloyd remembered that he couldn't kill him with magic, and when Grimm told him that hadn't happened yet, he thought he'd try to cause one death with magic to use as much of his power as he could to try it out. Pazuzu was shocked when the area around them turned dark and Grimm told him that the reason why his magic energy doesn't affect Lloyd is because it's never enough and doesn't compare to 1% of what he has, while Lloyd decided to try some of his spells and take advantage of the chance that no one can see him and unleash his full power. Pazuzu felt like he was in a nightmare when he saw the huge amount of energy he had and became in an inescapable predicament, then decided that he had no choice but to try to escape after realizing that Lloyd wanted to lock him in a cage, and continued to run for a long time while Lloyd fired hundreds of spells at once and tried to lock him inside many barriers. Pazuzu felt exhausted but summoned the strength to escape and decided that he wouldn't let Lloyd lock him in a cage no matter what, but was surprised to find that he was basically already locked in a large cage from which he couldn't escape. Pazuzu desperately tried to get out of the barrier and asked Lloyd what he was going to do to him. Lloyd told him that he was going to perform his magical experiments on him. He couldn't believe that he would be under the control of a human like him and told him that he was the devil who would soon rule the world, and tried to tempt him with anything to leave him alone. But he ended up trapped by his spells inside the barrier, and Lloyd decided to activate 240 spells against him for a full half an hour. After 5 minutes, Lloyd marveled at the silence inside the cage and had to stop his overwhelming attack to see if Pazuzu was still alive. Grimm told him that spells affect demons the same way lights and noises affect humans, but at the rate he was firing spells at him, he was unable to move. Then Pazuzu wondered how he ended up failing so miserably after spending a century raising monsters and trying to rule the world. After a while, everyone regained consciousness with the disappearance of the polluted air, and Lloyd felt that he was in trouble and had to think of a good excuse to tell them. Grimm told Pazuzu that people don't follow leaders who are always complaining about how hard they work to get to where they are, and that Lloyd is the opposite. He's just doing what he likes, having fun, not caring about anything. And that's why people want to go with him. Then he realizes that he's only with him to gather his strength and take his revenge one day. Before fading away, Pazuzu confided in him his ambition to rule the world and achieve what he failed to achieve. And then Grimm swallowed him and got a good amount of energy. On the other side, Lloyd told everyone that the magician Robert had appeared and defeated their enemies and saved them. And when Tao heard his name, she kept looking around, hoping he was still around. Afterward, everyone returned to the royal palace, and Albert received full praise from their father Charles as the one who had defeated the demon. But he objected to his wrong decision from the beginning to go with only his royal guards. When he inquired about Tao and Robert, who had helped him defeat the demon, he was told that Robert had disappeared before he regained consciousness, while Tao had rushed off to find him and never returned, and Charles expressed interest in Robert's mysterious strength. Albert then praised Lloyd's efforts and told their father that he had contributed much to the hunt and suggested that he consider him as part of the royal succession because they had survived without loss of life thanks to his enhancement of the power of their weapons. Charles was surprised by his suggestion and told him that it would create a rival for the throne. But Albert didn't mind if it wasn't the best choice to rule the kingdom, and he objected to sidelining his brother because he was young and at the same time he intended to do his best not to surpass him. Then Charles asked Lloyd if he really wanted to join the competition for the succession alongside his brothers, and Lloyd hesitated for a moment before answering no. And after the end of the interview, he sat and enjoyed his time playing with one of the monsters that followed them to the palace after he was freed and became a pet, while Grimm felt jealous of Lloyd spoiling him, unlike what he always does with him. When he was surprised when Silpha approached them, he had to hide Grimm inside his pet's fur, and told her that he had given him a new name, Shiro, and then asked her how best to communicate with him as he wanted to teach him many things, but she told him that this is the specialty of the monster tamers. While they were talking, Grimm pulled a part of himself out of Shiro so he wouldn't suffocate and marveled at Lloyd's decision to turn down his chance to rule as if he wasn't that important to him and was just a real magic freak. Charles thought he was too humble to be the future king of the kingdom, while Albert saw the position of king as a secondary role for him. Over time, Lloyd succeeds in taming Shiro and teaching him some simple commands, but he still has trouble teaching him more complex things like spinning around a certain number of times or barking at different speeds. And his command spell confuses him and he can't understand it. Silpha thought they should find someone who knew how to deal with monsters to help him tame him, so she thought they should go to his sister Princess Ali's garden tower, which is known for taming many animals around the world. When they arrived at the tower, Grimm wondered about Ali's, and Lloyd told him that she was the 6th princess of the kingdom, 3 years older than him, and a lover of animals of all kinds. And while he was talking about her, he was surprised by her jumping towards him like a bomb and falling on top of him to hug him warmly. When their eyes met, she kissed him in front of everyone, which made him unconscious. Then her maid Eris appeared and scolded her for attacking her younger brother. And when the situation calmed down, she found that he had come to ask her about Shiro and kept caressing him all the time. Silpha suggested to Lloyd that they turn back because she doubted that Alice could help them, but he decided to give her a chance and then asked her to show them one of her monsters, so she summoned Lyro, a horse-shaped monster that is considered to be more powerful than Shiro. Lloyd was surprised that Lyro was able to evade the detection technology of his surroundings and did not feel his presence when Alice summoned him, nor did he notice her summoning him before he appeared and analyzed what happened until he realized that his sister can issue complex commands without showing any signs. He then asked her to teach him how to tame animals so that he could communicate with Shiro. She told him that it would not be an easy task. Lloyd was excited, and when he focused his full attention on what she was saying, he was disappointed when she said that the key to communicating with animals was love. Eris tells him that there is no point in trying to understand Ali's ability as she seems to be a magnet for the animals around her. Alice is furious and tells her that anyone can learn to communicate with animals and all they have to do is feel love, and it will go smoothly. Then the maids were surprised when the animals suddenly rushed towards them to play and tear their clothes, while Lloyd thought about his sister's words until he realized what she meant. And then Silpha was surprised that love was one of the things that interested him and began to have many romantic fantasies between them. Then Lloyd realized that his sister was not commanding her animals, but rather sharing her will with them by observing her magical energy flowing from her head when they moved at once towards them. And then he decided to apply it to Shiro and succeeded the first time in mentally taming him to everyone's amazement. Eris realizes how talented Lloyd is at using his abilities, while Alice insists that love is the common factor between humans and animals. Lloyd tells her that love is an important factor and the reason why she gained this ability in the first place, and that animals will need to feel empathy in order to listen to their thoughts, and he ends up surrounded by Alice and all her animals and almost suffocates from the crowds around him. Afterward, Lloyd and Silpha left to return home after getting what they wanted. She told him that he needed to apply the same motivation towards animals to his sword training. But Albert saved him just in time by intervening and telling her that they had to postpone their training until later because he wanted to talk to him. Then he told him that he would like him to meet someone, and that a young man approached them, and Albert told him that he was the fourth prince of the kingdom and his name was Diane. After the three of them went to talk privately, Diane mentioned that he had used a charm on Albert's sword and told him that it was unbelievable to him, then pointed his weapon at Lloyd and ordered him to prove his claim to him. Albert whispered to him that Diane is a blacksmith and told him that he traveled to a neighboring country to learn blacksmithing when he was his age, and that is why he is interested in the magic of infatuation. When Diane asked him to use the magic on one of the swords in front of him, Lloyd began to strengthen the sword while Diane thought that if it is true, then he is above the level of all blacksmiths in Bartram's country. After Lloyd finished engraving the spells on the blade, Diane was shocked that he had successfully strengthened the sword and engraved spells of strength, resilience, cleaning, and self-repair on the sword. He then lifted Lloyd up and told him that with his help, he would be able to fulfill his dream of creating the greatest sword of all time. He then told him that he loved magic at his age but realized he had no talent for it. So he turned to blacksmithing and expressed his desire to make everyone in the kingdom able to use magic with their advanced weapons. Lloyd was intrigued by the idea of producing a large number of enchanted swords and agreed to cooperate with his fourth older brother, and they decided that the first sword they would make would be a fire sword, where the user would be able to shoot fireballs at his opponent. Lloyd compressed the spell into 2 parts, and as soon as he put it on the metal, they were surprised that it shattered into pieces, as it did not support its weight. So he thought of reducing the pressure to 3 parts and continued to try several times, but all failed. And when Silpha and Shiro joined them, he apologized for wasting a large amount of energy essence and kept thinking about why the steel broke even though he reduced the pressure. Diane encourages him and tells him that they will definitely succeed in creating their first unique weapon. Grim whispers to him that there is something wrong with Diane's magical energy essence, and when he purifies it, he finds that it lacks one of the 3 elements due to its poor quality. When he asks Diane if he has this element, Diane tells him that it is very rare and is extracted from the core of monsters. He decides to sneak out and hunt monsters in the labyrinth as he did before, only to be surprised by Silpha suggesting the same thing. She told him that she had discussed it with his father a few days ago and he had agreed to this kind of experience in order to broaden his horizons, and she told him that she would accompany him to the Adventurers Guild to register him as an official adventurer. The next day, on his first visit to the guild, Lloyd was amazed to find that it was bigger than he thought it would be. Katarina, the registration supervisor, greeted them and gave him a form to register his data, and after he finished registering, she asked him to hold the blue crystal to measure his strength. Lloyd remembered that he had used one in his previous life when he joined the Magic Academy, and was worried that he would cause a loud explosion if he touched it because of his enormous power. So he decided to focus on compressing his energy and controlling its flow towards the crystal, and succeeded in reducing it until it was completely imperceptible, so he received an E rating and everyone thought he was just a pathetic child. Katarina was surprised that his magic was rated A, making him an expert magician, and told him that he was the most promising adventurer since the Silver Sword, and the others were outraged that this dwarf was compared to such a high-profile adventurer as the Silver Sword, who had reached an A rating before suddenly disappearing. Silpha interrupted them and asked Katarina to assign them to any maze quest she had available. She told them that it would take at least one B rank adventurer to be allowed to take it. Just as she was about to re-enroll in the guild, an adventurer approached her and asked her out on a date alone in one of the mazes, only to be surprised by the fact that half of them had fallen into a maze. Katarina told him that he had picked the wrong girl, and everyone was shocked when she said that Silpha was the famous ranked adventurer with the silver sword. Then she adds that she'll have to be demoted to see if she decides to re-enroll, making them unable to do any maze-related missions. Then Tao appears out of nowhere wearing Lloyd's robe and tells them she's willing to help them, but Silpha ignores her and pulls him out. When she yelled at them not to ignore her, Silpha wondered why she was showing up everywhere when she had already disappeared to look for Robert. She replied that she couldn't find him anywhere, so she had to look for him in the mazes, but she ended up becoming strong enough to get in a rank. She then offered to help them with their first mission in the maze in exchange for helping her get closer to Albert and get a date with him. Lloyd read the available missions and then expressed his admiration that his maid was a former adventurer. Silpha told him that she had been an adventurer as a means of training and was inexperienced at the time and had faced many opponents that she had failed to defeat, including a gang known as the Assassin's Guild. Lloyd used Shiro to take out monsters until they reached the treasure chest. Meanwhile, Diane continued his blacksmithing while waiting for Lloyd to return with the components they needed. When Albert worried about Lloyd's delayed return, Diane realized that a war might break out before their brother's return. And Albert told him that things had taken a turn for the worse. Albert told him that things had taken a dangerous turn. Diane tried to convince him to wait for Lloyd to return so that they could make enchanted weapons. He told him that he had deliberately brought them together so that they would get along as brothers and told him not to worry about any fighting and asked him to continue his research. Lloyd and the others came back with the labyrinth box on his head, and they all started experimenting with enchanted weapons again, and finally succeeded in making a fire sword. And when Diane tried it out, everyone was shocked that it was so powerful. At night, Lloyd lies on his bed after a hard day, feeling proud of his success in making several fire swords. Then he remembers noticing something strange in the garden that looks like a hole in a void, and despite Shiro's insight, he didn't notice it and kept thinking about what it was. In the meantime, a mysterious person sneaked into the palace garden and was watching Lloyd's room all the time. But without realizing it, he found Lloyd standing behind him after he was able to pinpoint his exact location. So the unknown person fled, but soon found himself trapped inside a huge barrier. Lloyd suggests that they have a little chat and accuses him of trespassing on private property. The mysterious person is forced to reveal his identity, and it turns out to be a young girl who decides to use her strength to subdue him and run away. Suddenly, Lloyd felt numbness in his body and a headache. Then he realized that she had used a spell that smelled like flowers. He tried to use a cleansing spell, but it didn't work against her magic, and she apologized to him because nothing could cleanse her poison. Then she used a black fog spell to completely block his vision and make him kneel in front of her, and then she used a black fog spell to blind him. Lloyd thought that his ability only works if the type of poison is common or known, which means that her poison is rare, and he remembered that there is a type of human born with a special magical energy that has threatening abilities and is known as the Deformed. The girl told him that his guess was correct and that she was infected with the poison and her name was Red. Then she headed towards his barrier and managed to shatter it like glass with one kick. Before she left, she told him that he would not die from her poison but would suffer damage for 2 or 3 days. After she was gone, Lloyd was still amazed at her ability to hide her presence so well, while Grimm rushed over to him and wondered how they would deal with the poison. So Lloyd decided to use a spell to help him heal gradually. Grimm wonders if he should follow her as long as he can move. Lloyd prefers to let her lead him to her hiding place since he already knows about her from Silpha. And when she appears tonight, he is certain that she is a member of the Assassin's Guild, a group of 6 individuals who each possess a special ability that is more like an innate nature. Grimm was amazed that he was able to track her even though she was so good at hiding herself. He told him that the way she hides is like a hole in space, but after realizing this, it was easy to track her, and they decided to go after her together. After that, Ren arrived at the gang's headquarters, and when Galilei learned that she had failed to assassinate Lloyd after his revelation, she told him that he was just a child, but she was able to find out that they are producing a large number of enchanted swords, which is a sign of war. Galilei tells her not to try to act like their leader Jade because he's long gone. She tells him she trusts he'll come back. Suddenly, Teria interrupts to tell them that an intruder is watching them, and Lloyd is shocked that she was able to find him so easily. Ren is shocked that he was able to follow her here even though he was poisoned, while Galilei realizes that the boy she was supposed to assassinate is the 7th prince of the kingdom and decides not to let him leave after learning about them. Lloyd decides to drop his protective barrier to take the opportunity to test the gang's strength, and is excited to attack them. The first member rushes towards him and is able to block him easily but drops his robe to surprise him with a quick strike and is amazed that a prince like him can master martial arts, while Lloyd finds that Tao's technique has paid off. When the green-haired man attacked him again, he discovered that the secret of his strength lay in the flexibility of his body, and was able to punch him using the flexibility of his spaghetti-like arm, then told him that he was born with a more flexible body than anyone else, known as the Babylon of Twists. Lloyd is surprised that his body is more flexible than can be done with magic, and without realizing it, the hooded figure appears out of nowhere behind him and uses his power on him, making him feel a sudden heaviness in his body. Galilei tells him that he is Crow's bird of prey, and the secret of his power lies in his words, which are like curses. Lloyd decides to use his magical energy to break free of the crow's curse. Galilei immediately attacks him, but he dodges him in time, but ends up tied up in a spider's web and tells him that his power is to make the energy in his body liquid. Lloyd tried to get out of his web as much as possible until he had to give up part of his clothes. And then he realized that each of them had a unique ability to control magical energy and turn it into different things. Before he could use a spell, Teria appeared in front of him and wondered if he had lost his sense of fear and shame in deciding to be half naked in front of them. She then plunged her sword into his leg, and Lloyd was shocked to see his leg receive the same damage as hers without her touching him. Then she told him that her ability was that she could share any damage she received with the person in front of her, and instead of feeling pain, Lloyd was amazed at her extraordinary abilities, and then returned to stand in line with the others after they had finished introducing themselves to him. Lloyd healed his wound, and then, to their shock, he healed Teria's wound as well. Even more frightening, he had the idea to increase his strength to try to inflict the most damage on her to see if the damage would reflect on him as she had told him, and he used his forearm bands as swords. Galilei felt fear when he remembered Silpha, who had traumatized him in the past after seeing him in this form, and as he rushed towards them with his super speed, they began to wonder what kind of eccentric prince could fight with a sword and martial arts style. Lloyd decided that his first victim would be Babylon, and when he attacked him, he used his fall relaxation to spread the damage around his body. When the others appeared in front of him, Crow used his ability to force him to be thrown away, but he dodged it and Galilei took the curse instead, causing him to fall heavily on top of Teria. When only Crow was left, Lloyd used Silpha's double blade technique on him, ripping his body apart and then smashing his head into the ground to take out the entire gang. Galilei was furious and wanted to kill him, but Teria told him not to move because she was tied to him. But he didn't listen to her and ended up naked, so Lloyd wanted to take the opportunity to attack her, but she warned him that he would take the same damage as her. He decides to test it out for himself, and when he hits her with a thunderous blow, he confirms her words and seems to enjoy the pain. Then Galilei tightens his grip on his arm so that he can't use his swords, and he dodges and pushes him away. Ren stood stunned, realizing that he could fight even in the worst of circumstances, and realized that he was crazy. When he called her to engage him, Galilei stopped her and told him that she couldn't control her poison and it would affect them all negatively. Lloyd realized that they all had the same thing in common. They couldn't control their powers very well. Galilei told him that they were cursed, and if they could control their powers, they would find another way to live instead of being criminals. When he lunged at him to grab him, he disappeared in a flash and ended up getting tased from behind. Ren was furious and decided to use her power to get him, but Lloyd put himself inside a barrier before she could reach him. Then Galilei told her that he was fine, and suddenly he realized that his power was under his control. Lloyd told him that he had carved a spell on his body to help him control his powers, and he started crying with joy that his curse was finally removed and he became a normal person. Then Lloyd asked the others to allow him to do the same for them. After he carved his spell on each of them, they realized that it was real and that they could control their magical energy. And Crow was happy to be able to speak normally without causing harm to anyone. Galilei then approached Ren, who was sitting alone and crying, and told her that she could now wear whatever she wanted after controlling her power. And they all decided to appoint Lloyd as the 7th member of their gang and gave him Ren's former clothes. Ren protests and tells them that he's working on weapons for a war and has already infiltrated the bunker. Grimm tells her that they don't have anything to do with Lloyd, and that he's already infiltrated the bunker. Grimm tells her that they have no idea what kind of war she's talking about and that making enchanted swords was Lloyd's idea of a good time. And Lloyd is excited to see her abilities again now that she can control them. Galilei told him that there were things he needed to know about them and then told him the history of their gang and how it was originally formed and that they had a leader known for the power of teleportation and the curse of the ghost Jade, and then told him that one day they were surprised that Jade came back to them and told them that he was traveling between several places until he ended up in Egypt, specifically near the pyramids, and then gave them some gifts from the ancient Egyptian heritage. Galilei added that Jade's curse is the worst of them, as he teleports to random locations involuntarily. On the day of his return, he sat among them and took out a coin with a wolf on it and told them that this would become the emblem of their new gang, and decided that from now on they would accept suspicious tasks that the Adventurers Guild could not do. The gang's goal was to prove their existence and that they didn't intend to harm anyone by leaving their logo at the site of every successful mission until the time comes when they no longer have to hide in the shadows. After explaining his plan, Anya reluctantly moved on. Galilei went on to say that they had felt a glimmer of hope until they learned that the ruler of Lerdost was preparing for war. And as he spoke, a black envelope appeared out of nowhere in their midst. After some time, Sylpha breaks into the bunker to retrieve Lloyd, and when she finds the place empty, she realizes that he left a message behind to tell her that he was going to visit the palace of the Lord of Lords with the Assassin's Guild. She returned the message to Albert, who was shocked by Lloyd's sudden decision and how quickly he had become aligned with the Assassin's Guild, as well as the strained relations between the two countries, and for a moment he thought that the Assassins and Lord Ost had teamed up to take his brother hostage. Diane tried to calm him down and told him not to start a war with Lloyd on the theory that no one could kidnap a child like Lloyd, so Albert decided to make war his last card and pursue peaceful solutions. Then Sylpha gave him what she found in the hideout, Lloyd's clothes covered in spiderweb fluid, but their suspicious appearance made them think that the gang had stripped and raped Lloyd, and Albert was furious and decided to declare war on everyone. On the other hand, Lloyd was on his way to Lurdost with members of the Assassin's Guild after receiving a message from Jade in the bunker, in which they learned that he had succeeded in overthrowing the town's ruling regime and stopping the war, and became the ruler of Lurdost and invited them to meet him at the royal palace. Ren asks Lloyd to join them and accompany them to meet Jade and help him control his power as he did with them. He tells her that the message was teleported to this exact location, which means that he can control his power in advance in some way, as teleportation is one of the most complex types of magic and no one has been able to fully discover it yet. Everyone began to suspect that their leader had been lying to them all this time and that he wasn't actually as cursed as they were, which made them doubt the content of the message and that it might be a trap. Then Ren thought that he might have learned to control his power. Lloyd said that in that case they wouldn't need him to accompany them, but he would anyway because he was interested in learning more about Jade's power. After 10 minutes, everyone felt exhausted because Lloyd was flying at full speed. He decides to take a break and then continue on their way on foot as they approach the town. Then Ren rushes into the forest to bring them some food. And as soon as she leaves, Babylon tells him that she wants to show off in front of him as she was living in the forest alone after she accidentally killed her parents with her poison. Then Jade found her and brought her to the gang, and on her first day she almost killed him, although he insisted that she stay with them. Years later, they all succeeded in creating a special cape for her that limits the spread of poison outside her body, and since then Jade has become like a big brother to her, and they live together as a family, and Lloyd is even more eager to meet the leader of the gang. After Ren returns, she prepares food for them and they all have their heads bowed, knowing she's cooking something so awful that Babylon asks Crow to use his power to make it taste good, and before he can say anything, Ren blocks him with a poisonous punch and tells them it already tastes good. Teria wondered if she already knew that Lloyd was a prince, so she should prepare food for him, but they were shocked to find that he and Grim were devouring the food with gusto while Lloyd thought it was delicious compared to what he had eaten in his previous life as a penniless bastard. Ren watched proudly as they practiced their culinary skills and then remembered Jade rushing in one day and telling them that the Adventurers Guild would reconsider the bounty on their heads, and as soon as they heard that, they started celebrating together as if they had been pardoned. Jade decided to confess something to them and told them that all this time he was pretending to be a homeless person, but he was actually the third son of the ruler of Lordost, and he approached them all in order to exploit them, as Lordost is ruled by his family, which is considered a demonic group and they are always planning a war, so he decided to look for allies and seek power to prevent war until he found them and succeeded in founding this gang. Surprisingly, their reactions were cold. They didn't feel like they were being tricked and told him that they had a hunch because of the way he acted, while the only one who was shocked to hear the truth was Ren. Galilei then told him that they had all taken different paths in the past that they'd rather not talk about. Teria then said that he had given them hope despite his motives, and when they started scoffing at the idea that they might have to kill his brothers in the end, he told them that he wanted to settle the matter himself so that their right to live a normal life wouldn't be wasted. He then added that he has nothing to lose since his body is cursed and his family is cursed, and the only good thing in his life is that he was able to spend time with. So he wants to take care of his family himself without caring what happens to him in the future when the Adventurers Guild finds out about his crime, and that he wants to forget everything about Lurdost and live with them forever. He then asks them to promise to keep the gang going even if he never comes back and not to give up hope of living freely. He vowed that if he could return to them again, he would return as the ruler of Lordost and make it a home where the curse can live happily. Lloyd fell into a deep sleep on Galilei's back. He seemed to be just a nice boy, despite his immense strength, and he always kept a strong barrier around himself when he slept. As they approached the royal palace, Ren suggested that they check it out while Lloyd took a break because she suspected that Jade was under the control of a Lordsust official and might have forced him to send that message. They agreed and decided to leave him in peace and go explore the palace. When they got close enough, they found many lights and decorations inside. They thought that Jade had given them a reception, but they didn't sense any aggression inside the palace. So Grimm suggested that they go back and take Lloyd with them. just in case. Then they were surprised to see a strange Lego-like figure standing behind them who recognized them as the Assassin's Guild immediately, and they ended up sitting at a large table receiving a standing ovation from everyone after being pulled inside by the figure. They were all feeling awkward and uncomfortable, not knowing table manners and not used to being in a crowded place. When Grimm wanted to go back to get Lloyd, Ren asked him to stay with her a little longer as she was nervous about meeting Jade at any time. Within minutes, Jade appeared in front of them, and they couldn't believe that they had finally met him and were surprised by his ability to control his ability. He told them that it took some practice, but he succeeded in the end, and they all started crying happily. Then Ren approached him after Grimm encouraged her, and as soon as she stood in front of him, she felt nervous and told him that there was a lot she wanted to say, but she could not express herself now, and Grimm took the opportunity to return to Lloyd. And that's when they were shocked by Jade and everyone at the party changing into terrifying forms and found him ordering them to bow down to him using a technique similar to Crow's ability to speak. He then announced to the crowd that he had succeeded in luring the cursed ones to the palace, and when he decided to leave them to his followers to do as they please, Grimm tried to save them by attacking him and telling them to run away quickly, but before he could finish his sentence, Jade moved in and gave him a sudden kick that made him bleed. After kicking him away, he ended up going back to where Lloyd was, who was awakened by the sound of the impact and was surprised to find himself alone and even more confused to see Grimm in a pitiful state, and in a state of rage because the others had been tricked. On the other side, the gang realizes that they are under the control of a group of people who have been infiltrated by psychic beings who control them like puppets, including Jade, who tells them that everyone here are basically demons that he brought from the underworld. He then went on to say that he was desperate to get his hands on something precious in this land, Jade's body, and his unique teleportation ability, and introduced himself as Gisarm, who had taken possession of the body after he got rid of its owner by racking his brains for months. When Ren expressed her anger at what he was saying and asked him what he had done to Jade, he kicked her as punishment for interrupting him and caused the earring that Jade had given her to fall off, then told the others that he cared about them so much that they begged him not to hurt them and that he was able to learn everything about them through his brain. Gisarm added that Jade preferred to die after learning that he was after his friends, and while he was on the verge of death, he treated him so that he wouldn't lose control of his body, but Jade kept trying to commit suicide in various ways until he managed to control his mind completely and caused his own demise forever. Everyone felt so angry at him, wanting to kill him but completely helpless to do anything about it, that they began to follow Gisarm, begging him to let them take over their bodies, and one of them decided to take Ren's body. He grabbed her and told him that he should be very careful of her, as she had caused the death of her parents with her poison. Then he noticed the inscription on her arm and wondered that it was not in Jade's memories, so he questioned her to find out what it was and its effect. But she tried to resist his ability to force her to speak by biting her tongue. She then began to fantasize that she could somehow bring Jade back to life so that he could see that she could control her powers and wear whatever she wanted. She also wanted to get him to meet Lloyd while being pressured by Gisarm to tell him who the inscription belonged to. And at the same time she was being pressured by Gisarm to tell him. Suddenly, magical circles appeared directly above the palace, and then a beam came out of it, causing all his followers to be annihilated and crushed underground without leaving him a chance to defend himself. And Lloyd, with his thunderous attack, caused a hole like a volcanic fever and managed to save the assassinated guild by placing them inside protective barriers so that they do not suffer the same damage as the rest. Lloyd walks up to Ren and uses his healing ability on her mouth, then tells everyone to leave the palace immediately because Gisarm is targeting them. They don't hesitate for a second to follow his order. When Galilei picks up Ren and runs away, she objects to letting Lloyd take care of them alone. Gisarm is a monster beyond their comprehension and will end up being an obstacle in Lloyd's way. After they leave, Gisarm teleports back as if nothing happened and orders his minions to follow the Assassin's Guild and catch them before they go into hiding. Lloyd then launched his thunderous attack again, but divided into several magical circles to prevent them from chasing his comrades, attacking them from all sides and destroying a large part of the palace. But Gisarm managed to dodge his attack again. While Lloyd was barricading himself inside a barrier, he was surprised when the cursed word penetrated his barrier without breaking it, and he was faced with the choice of letting it touch him to see what happens next, or avoiding it. He made a split-second decision and dodged the attack. When he found one of the demons above him coming after him, he used a spell to analyze his body and found that the demon controlled the heart of the human in possession of his body, and if he hurt him, the demon would kill him by cardiac arrest. Grimm advised him that they should flee immediately because Gisarm was unlike any opponent he had ever encountered before, as his spells did not require the creation of spells, but rather his magical energy created the effects directly. Lloyd realized that his barrier would make no difference against Gisarm's abilities, which are very similar to Crow and Pazuzu but more effective, so Grimm told him that demons are classified into 10 categories, and Gisarm's followers seem to be in the lowest category, so he can attack them with magic, as it worked against Pazuzu of the 8th category and himself, who is in the 3rd category. Lloyd guessed that Gisarm is a first-class demon, But Grimm told him that the situation is much worse, as he is above all 10 classes and is the king of demons, as 100 first-class demons wouldn't stand a chance against him. Lloyd thought that despite all this, he seems to be more than just an irredeemable villain. Instead of running away, he approached him, and when Gisarm asked him what he was, he told him that he was just a last order prince, and he realized that this was the 7th prince in Jade's memories, and it seems that he wanted to see him for some reason. Lloyd tells him that he screwed up and they'll never meet again because of him. Gisarm asks him what's wrong with him, and he tells him that he destroyed his throne and his followers with his overwhelming attack, as well as collaborating with the cursed and helping them escape. As the two prepared to engage each other, Grimm almost wet his pants in fear, or more accurately, Lloyd's hand, and the two ended up fighting for fun, each confident in their ability to finish the other off. Grimm tried one last time to convince Lloyd to run away, and that their chances of winning were slim, but to no avail as Lloyd was thinking about the spell that would work against him and was furious that he had to fight the Demon King because of him. When Gisarm attacked them, Lloyd was able to dodge his blow with the barrier, as it could not penetrate it completely due to its use of several layers. So Gisarm was excited to see how long his barrier would hold up against his attacks and threw hundreds of curses at him all at once. Lloyd dodged them as best he could, but the curses followed him wherever he went, and he would put more layers on as they shattered his barrier. And suddenly Gisarm was standing right on top of his barrier, breaking it with a single kick. Lloyd was shocked to learn that Gisarm was using the highest level of magic to unite all of his curses into one strike. And after the barrier was destroyed, he moved a safe distance away and began to think of a way to hit Gisarm. While Gisarm was thinking that he couldn't put enough pressure on him with teleportation, when Lloyd mentioned that this ability wasn't his to begin with, he told him that Jade didn't know how to fully utilize its power while he did, making it his, as demons are born with an innate ability to control magical energy and liken the damned to birds that have wings but don't know how to use them properly. Then he marveled at the idea that they still resisted death even though they were just creatures hated and feared by their kind. They should be more open and accepting of their death. Then he decided to show him the perfection that a demon reaches when it is combined in a cursed body. He asked Lloyd if he intended to defend, evade, or flee. Before Lloyd could move, the first arrow pierced his body without him realizing it. Gisarm told him he had no choice but to die, and continued to plunge the arrows into his body until he stopped moving. Meanwhile, the Assassin's Guild was confronted by Gisarm's followers. Galilei used his spider web to prevent them from approaching them, and then Crow used his ability to force them to submit and not try to evade. Babylon took advantage of the opportunity and opened the portal so that they could make a quick escape. But they were surprised by the power of the demons to evade their abilities, and Teria decided to inflict enough damage to allow them to escape and told her companions to leave her and flee out of her line of sight. As the demons healed themselves, she didn't hesitate to stick her sword in her foot to keep them from moving and promised her companions that she wouldn't let any of them take over her body. Galilei pushed the others to the other side, closed the portal, and decided to fight alongside Teria. Then he told her that he would be by her side as she delivered the fatal blow. The demons were shocked that she was going to cut her throat to get rid of them all at once, and they rushed towards her to stop her, but Galilei stopped them with his nets. Teria began to imagine how Jade had suffered to commit suicide over and over again, while Ren began to cry because they were about to break free of their shackles and live with humans normally. Then she saw Teria start to cut her own throat and cause the death of herself and everyone in sight, including Galilei. Meanwhile, Gisarm scoffed at the idea of the curse living with humans in one place and getting along, finding it a pathetic dream. Then he looked at Lloyd's corpse and felt frustrated because he thought he would be entertained for a longer time. But he was surprised to see his body turning into a solid state and being smashed into crumbs. Then he appeared out of nowhere by Grimm and tried to settle the matter with one blow from his sword. But he dodged it in time and realized that Lloyd used a bait to escape death. Lloyd began to think of a way to get him after all his tricks failed, and suddenly he asked Gisarm to look for another place to continue their fight. And on the other side, the Assassin's Guild was surprised by the sudden attack of the demons from behind the gate. Then the owner of the attack destroyed the gate and headed towards the demons, revealing that Albert and his brothers had come to save Lloyd. Upon their arrival, Albert and the others realized that things have gone unexpectedly after the demons took control of Lordos. When Ren is relieved that help has arrived, Albert gives her a sharp look and tells them that their priority is to deal with them. When Sylpha drew her sword against them, they were horrified, then told them that their plan had been exposed. Then asked them where Lloyd was and threatened to behead them one by one if they lied or remained silent. Galilei had to tell her that he was in the middle of a fight inside the palace. Then Ren told them that he was fighting inside the palace. Ren then told them that he was fighting the Demon King for them and that they were all his allies. Babylon put his hand over her mouth and told her not to forget the promise they had made with Lloyd to keep his and Grimm's power a secret if they met anyone from the kingdom. Sylpha gets tired of waiting and decides to cut Ren's head off first. She yells at her to wait and then tells her that Lloyd is fighting a loser in the neighborhood. But to their surprise, she doesn't believe them and is about to get rid of them. But Albert intervenes. They hoped he would believe them and kept chanting his name. But they were soon shocked when he told Silpha to start getting rid of the adults first, and when they saw Lloyd's boxers in his hand, he asked why he was fighting his brother for people who left such a thing as a threat. Galilei made things worse by telling him that Lloyd's clothes were stained with his fluids and that they left them hanging to dry and almost ate him alive. But Ren stood up and told them that she was grateful to them for saving her family, and that they were just as worried about Lloyd as they were and would take any punishment on behalf of the rest of them. When she told them what happened to their leader because of the demons and that's why Lloyd fought for them, one of the demons lunged at them. Alice fought it off and fed it to her horse, then told the others that they should believe Ren because her horse would have eaten her if it felt any ill will towards her. Albert decided to follow her instincts and distract them to take care of the demons, then ordered Silpha to go look for Lloyd. Ren was confused and caught her before she left, and tried to convince her that he was fighting a weak person and didn't need help. Then, to everyone's surprise, arrows hit an area near them, appearing out of nowhere and causing the bridge to collapse. And when they saw the demons swimming towards the bank, they realized that they intended to surround them. So Albert ordered everyone to return to the riverbank. On the other side, it turns out that Gisarm had deliberately intercepted them, in agreement with Lloyd, so as not to be discovered and spoil their fight. When they resumed their fight, Lloyd continued to dodge his arrows. Lloyd saw that he could let the others handle things downstairs while he focused on Gisarm, while Albert and Diane realized that their magic was useless against their regeneration ability, and that they needed something more powerful than fire before their powers faded over time. While Albert was thinking of a way, he was surprised when Silpha disappeared from their ranks. On the other side, Silpha grabbed Shiro and asked him to take her to where Lloyd was, but he didn't move due to the distance between the bridge and the palace. While they were thinking of a trick that would allow them to cross to the other side, they were surprised by Shiro's sudden jump into the water, and ended up floating above the water, frustrated by his failure. Then a demon appeared and tried to surprise Silpha from behind, but she intercepted him in time, and he admired her skill and speed in dealing with him. When Silpha realized that demons are categorized, she wondered which category Pazuzu belonged to. On the other side, Albert's soldiers continued to burn the demons while Albert thought about what had happened to this country, and felt the urge to save the people whose bodies had been taken by demons. Then one of the demons tried to attack him from behind, and before he could defend himself, Babylon swooped down and twisted his head 360 degrees, causing him to drop dead. He then offered to band together to fight the demons because he reminded him of their leader, Jade, and told him that he was aware of their bad reputation and did not intend to make excuses about how they had no choice but to continue living. But they are not the type of people who take life lightly. Albert thanked him for the advice and turned to the rest of the demons to euthanize them and end their suffering, using his most powerful spells to set the entire area on fire. When he was exhausted, Diane helped him up and told him that he had gone too far in that attack. He told him that they were now fighting to avenge the loss of their neighbors and ordered his soldiers to show no mercy to the demons. On the other side, Silpha and the swordsmen of the underworld began to clash, and even with their most powerful techniques, they were fairly evenly matched, and neither could touch the other, as the Assassin's Guild was amazed that a mere maid could possess such power. In the end, they each managed to inflict a head wound on the other, and the swordsman, disgusted at the idea of an evenly matched fight against a human, decided to abandon the idea of taking the body of one of the gang members and take hers instead. Silpha was surprised that he was going to use a sword with his other hand, while everyone was shocked that he was using Lordos's fighting style. He told them that the owner of this body used to train so hard that his left hand was covered in bruises and thought that he must have lived a long life. He then vowed to take Silpha's body so that he could have enough fun developing his sword skills to the highest level possible. But he was soon shocked when he saw her leap towards him, intending to use his Devil's Blade technique. The swordsman managed to block her with great difficulty, not realizing what was happening. She told him that she had learned his technique from watching and told him that the difference between them was that she could steal any technique without having to possess the user's body. The swordsman was furious at her words, and when she summoned Shiro, he told her that fighting alongside him would be useless against him. But she was already hiding her sword inside his fur, and remembered when Lloyd gave her this sword after he made it with Diane, and told her that he made sure the sword was as strong and flexible as possible, and that he was confident that the sword would withstand her strength and she would be able to take down a demon with it. When Lloyd told them everything he knew about demons and their possession of human bodies, he said that they could cause the demon to die inside the human body. But the problem was that the body would be many times stronger than normal, so it would take a single attack to do overwhelming damage to it. Then Silpha approached him and asked why he chose strength and flexibility for the sword. He replied that he felt that she was deliberately being cautious while swinging the sword, as if she was afraid that it would shatter due to her excessive strength. She felt very happy that he cared about her so much and promised to keep this sword. The devil laughed at the name of her sword and told her that the matter had already been decided after they seized Lordos and turned it into a country for their amusement, and told her that their plan was specifically designed to lure Jade out. And the plan worked after they announced their intention to go to war after seizing the bodies of the country's royal family. The Assassin's Guild was outraged that the demons had deliberately provoked Jade through his weakness to force him to show himself to them. Ren rushed towards him, intending to kick his ass to avenge the leader, but Silpha knocked her down with a punch and told her not to get in her way, then prepared to take down the swordsman and promised them that the nightmare of war would not come true. The swordsman was excited to use his secret technique of the demon blade, and when he rushed towards her with full force, he was torn to pieces in one move by Silpha using the tiger bite technique. Silpha approached the swordsman's corpse and wished she could duel a swordsman as skilled as him using the Lordos technique. When she saw Ren crying, she thought she knew him, but Ren told her that she was just crying at the thought that he might have been happy in his life before he died. Silpha realizes that they still have good feelings inside of them, and the title of assassins doesn't seem to fit. While Galilei and Crow realize that it's the silver sword they encountered earlier, and suddenly the rest of the bridge begins to collapse and they are stuck in the middle. Lloyd appeared in front of them after dodging Gisarm's back-to-back attacks. Still trying to figure out how to dodge his arrows and launch an attack against him, he began analyzing his attacks over the course of their fight to find a loophole that would allow him to get him, and found that the problem was that he always had to move at a high rate of speed. Realizing that Gisarm might be planning to wait for his magical energy to run out so that he could finish him off in one fell swoop. He thought he could finish him off with a spell that took less than 2 seconds to activate and summoned a giant fiery entity to throw a punch at Gisarm, who was stunned at the sight of it and preferred not to have his clothes burned. When he decided to dodge, Lloyd had already anticipated it and was preparing a backup plan. When he found him gone, he used spectral detection to find him. When he located him, he found it difficult to see him due to the thick smoke, and Grim warned him of a surprise attack. When he noticed that Gisarm hadn't attacked him with Shadow Wolf when he was standing in the thick smoke, he realized that he was using the line of sight to set a target for his teleportation. He paused for a moment and decided to land. He wandered around for a while to make sure Gisarm had lost track of him so he couldn't attack him, so he thought he'd get close enough to hit him with the sword. As Gisarm wandered through the smoke looking for him, he was surprised by the appearance of a large number of clones of Lloyd heading towards him at once. He realized that he had made food out of his body to distract him, and because of his lack of recognition, he had to wait until they stabbed him with swords, and then he was able to identify the real Lloyd when he found that he was the only one of them not using an earthen sword. After pushing him away, he told him that magical and physical attacks were useless against him and that he didn't have to carry out the plan using his real body because he would regenerate anyway. After some time, he noticed that his clone was still clinging to him and staring at him in silence. He was shocked by the fact that he had risked giving one of his dolls his real sword to attack him and kept looking for the real one among them until he thought he was hiding above him because it was the most visible place. But his body soon ignited after the real Lloyd appeared behind him and succeeded in damaging him. He felt proud that his plan had finally worked, but thought that the possibility of things going badly for him was high because his blood could only move in limited ways and he would soon be discovered. While Gisarm was thinking of a way to get him, he decided to take the easy way out and attack them all at once. He managed to locate him by using his barrier, so he rushed towards him and broke through his barrier with his hand. And once he grabbed his head and smashed it, he was shocked that he wasn't the real one, making it difficult to locate him with his abilities. But he didn't give up on the idea of attacking them all at once, and as he guessed how he could be recognized in the crowd, he found it very exciting and enjoyed taking out as many dolls as he could in order to find him. Meanwhile, Lloyd was basically using his cloaking technique to dodge the arrows and move freely among the puppets when he decided to take a risk and surprise him with a knockout blow from behind with his sword, in which he had put all the spells he had collected. At that time, Grim was trembling in fear of his excessive boldness and that he intended to try and use the technique that Jade had spent his life discovering and failed, and tried to convince him to run away while they had the chance. But he knew in his heart that he would not miss the opportunity to learn about an undiscovered magic. After Lloyd used the spells collected inside the sword, he entered a world full of spells and talismans and kept looking for Jade but couldn't find him and ended up surrounded by circles of magic spells. Lloyd then decided to expose himself right in front of Gisarm, and when he noticed the wound on his face, he realized that he wasn't using a barrier to protect himself and thought that he had succumbed to the idea that he couldn't beat him. He then asked him why he was fighting for the pathetic Assassin's Guild and told him that he wasn't like them and was somehow broken, just like him. Lloyd replied that lions don't ask why they have claws and fangs because it never bothered them, and the same goes for him. He was born strong and that's all he has, unlike humans who live in suffering because of what they lack. That's why their best option is magic. Gisarm told him that he doesn't care about all this. Then he lunged at him and decided to finish him, and that's when Lloyd hit him with a thunderous punch that caused him deadly pain, and then told him that this time he attacked him using the breathing technique while Gisarm was furious because he was able to determine where he would move to. Then Lloyd sat down on a rock and asked him to show him more of his strength, and Gisarm thought that he had been fooled by a stroke of luck. And then Lloyd asked him if he still remembered what Jade had told him before his death, and he pretended not to care. But he was shocked when Lloyd told him that he would lose as Jade had told him. As Jade's voice begins to creep into his head, He rushes full force towards Lloyd, who begins to deliver painful kicks from all sides, while Gisarm believes that he can recover once he regains his balance and dodges his blows, but the trouble lies in knowing where he intends to move to escape him. Lloyd then launches a thunderous hellstorm attack to push him into the lava he left behind. Gisarm realizes he's in trouble and can't locate his current position, so he tries to avoid falling into it by moving around until he manages to get past Lloyd and back to the surface. Lloyd provokes him and threatens to take his life if he is no longer amused and runs out of ideas. Gisarm's anger reaches its peak and tells him that he will now wipe out the world with his next attack. Lloyd and Grim are surprised when he uses his full magical power to create a giant black sphere known as the Mortal Darkness Sphere. Gisarm aimed the ball directly at Lloyd, but was quickly shocked to find that it disappeared before it reached him. Lloyd then told him that he was able to erase it with a similar technique, the Void Spell, which sends any ability used by his opponent into another dimension and turns it into dust. In the past, while exploring all the details of magical spells, he had done an experiment about making two balls collide with each other at the same time and saw that the result would be 0 and both balls would disappear. After Gisarm heard that he was messing around with balls of light to learn magic, he went crazy and told him that it takes a lot of energy to create a single ball. He told him that he was excited to see what would result from two forces colliding with each other, and the result was as disappointing as he now feels about it. Gisarm couldn't stop complaining about a human having the ability to mimic one of his abilities and vowed to take away his body and mess with his magical energy as he wished. As he rushed towards him and grabbed him, he was horrified when he entered his magical energy field and found it to be beyond the imagination of any living being. Lloyd decides to take matters into his own hands and hits him with dozens of vacuum balls simultaneously. Before he can escape, he ends up vanishing into nothingness. Meanwhile, Albert and Diane are fighting side by side, unable to see their enemies because of the smoke. But thanks to Lyro and Shiro's sense of smell, they were able to locate the demons and devour them. Silpha wondered why she suddenly smelled a pleasant odor, which turned out to be the poison of Ren, who told them not to breathe too deeply because she doubted her ability to control her power yet. Albert thought he would be able to see better when the sun came up, but when he checked his watch, he realized that the sky should be bright now, and when they looked at the sky, it was dark, but in a slightly different way than the darkness of the night. Meanwhile, Gisarm was being pulled into the void and trying desperately to evade Lloyd's ball, but to no avail. He thought about leaving Jade's body, but before he could escape, he was caught between his teeth by the deadly phenomenon of stiffness. When he found no way to escape, he thought of pretending to be Jade, who regained consciousness after Gisarm's death, and begged him to stop his ball and save him before he died. But Lloyd did not care about these tricks and decided to finish him and crush him inside the void. And when it was over, the morning sun rose and surprised the ghost of Jade standing behind him smiling before he disappeared. When Ren saw the sunlight, she remembered Jade telling them about the legend of the 7th prince, and that on the day of his birth, there was a great incident inside the royal palace, and it turned out that it was because he used a magic spell when he was born. And then everyone couldn't understand it and considered it a rumor, while Jade hoped that the prince who has a great talent for magic could be able to rid them of their curses and bring them out of their hiding place one day. Lloyd then erected a headstone in a place far from the rest of the graves for Jade and placed his emblem on the monument instead of his body, which was consumed by the void, as a keepsake. When Grim admired his ability to use the Void spell despite its slow pace, he replied that he had already deciphered the Shadow Wolf technique. He then told him that he had crafted a spell that allowed him to know when Gisarm was using it and then linked it to his reflexive movements to release a vacuum, so it was easy to trap Gisarm and dodge his attacks. He then admitted how powerful he was and that he had risked his life when he decided to decode his spell during the fight. But he wouldn't have been satisfied if he hadn't discovered his ability before he died, and when he remembered entering the Jade spell domain, he realized that he had copied an entire Shadow Wolf spell before he died in the hope that someone in the future would come looking for a way to overcome it and take credit for defeating Gisarm. Meanwhile, Ren was sitting behind a tree eavesdropping on their conversation and decided to express her gratitude to him for avenging Jade. But she noticed Albert heading towards them, and as he approached, Grim hid behind the monument. When he asks about the grave, Lloyd is confused at first, but Albert tells him that he knows what happened between him and the gang and that they enlisted his help because he is an expert in magic and can connect them to Jade, but they ended up under siege by a horde of demons. As he recounts what the gang told him, Grim realizes they made up a story to ensure their safety. Impressed by his ability to defeat a demon on his own, he told him that he was proud of him, but unfortunately he would have to detain the Assassin's Guild for committing a series of crimes for a living, as well as kidnapping a member of the royal family and dragging him into a war. He then added that they would accept any punishment and would be willing to compensate for all this by serving him for life. He then pointed his sword at him and warned him that he would take full responsibility if he agreed to adopt them and they did anything wrong because they would still be a group of outlaws. Lloyd decided to take full responsibility for them in exchange for a pardon. Albert knelt down in front of him and told him not to think that people didn't care about him because he was the youngest among them, and not to let that isolate him and to come for help whenever he needed it. As he hugged him and patted his head, they were interrupted by Tao rushing towards them, worried after hearing that Lloyd was in trouble. But when her concern was met with silence, and after observing their dull reactions, she realized that the issue had already been resolved and her presence was meaningless. So she quietly turned back. They all rushed after her to thank her for helping them fight Pazuzu. After they left, Grimm thought it was nice of Lloyd to agree to take over the gang. But he told him that they were the new frontier of the magical world and their potential shouldn't be allowed to just walk away. Tao expresses her confusion at the presence of the Assassin's Guild. But Albert tells her that this is a spontaneous gathering and that she should focus on having a good time. Galilei tells him that their leader didn't like to dwell on sad things, so they'd rather say goodbye with a bang. So Albert decides to celebrate in the Assassin's Guild's own way. While they were having a good time together, Teria approached Albert and offered to have a drink with him, but he had to refuse since he is a prince and runs a business related to the royal family. So she decided to use her power to seduce him, and before he indulged in a drink with her, he remembered Galilei's liquid that filled his brother's underpants. Ren asks Silpha to let her work alongside Lloyd as a way to show her gratitude. But Silpha tells her that she can't make that decision, and that she'll have to ask Lloyd himself. She was shocked to find him in the bathroom with them after Silpha brought him in, and he told her that he didn't mind her working for him. She asked him if he was sure it was okay to have a venom curse like her with him, and he realized that none of them had come to terms with the ability they were born with. Then he told her that if she could understand the nature of her poison and break it down into elements, she might be able to work as a pharmacist and save many lives. She was surprised at the idea that her poison could cause people to be saved instead of die. So he advised her to decode her power and turn it into ordinary magic and then reformulate it as a spell. And he told her to consider this a long-term task that he would assign to her. Ren remembered her suffering all these years and people persecuting her because of her curse, and that she was finally redeemed and welcomed into society. And realized that Lloyd accepted them all for who they were and that he never once called them cursed, and promised to work hard before he left. Days later, Ren was assigned to work as Lloyd's personal maid under Silpha's supervision. And when he went to meet his father with Albert, he thought he'd get enough of a scolding, but was surprised to find Charles complimenting him on his efforts and living his life to learn more about magic as he'd wanted to do since he was resurrected.